Hello and thanks for checking out ChartGuys.com. We're proud to be one of the most successful technical analysis communities online, teaching you the skills to become a more confident, effective, and informed trader. Join our community of hundreds of analysts worldwide working together to learn the charts, generate profit, and achieve financial independence. For access to daily live chart analysis and market coverage, a thriving chat community, along with dozens of hours of exclusive educational materials. We look forward to seeing you. Let's check out some charts. Hey everyone, checking in on Canadian MJ. So I just looked at a poll that the Marijuana Stock Traders group on the Facebook, they put out, and they listed, what do you think the reason is for this current pullback that we're seeing? And the leader, 100 votes, was that we're seeing large institutions manipulating the price to buy lower. And the second lowest, or second most votes, was 60 something, and it said broader market is the reason for this pullback. So at this point, the correlations and my thoughts on the correlations, and the fact that I absolutely would be voting number 2, that it is the correlations to the overall market that are the reason for the current pullback. And that's just something to do with psychology, the reason that people think that it is manipulation going on. And that's because it's someone to blame and it's someone to point to. Well, this is why it's going down. This is why, maybe I'm in the red in my trade because someone else is doing something, and it's just not the right answer in my opinion. But that is something to note because you'll see that everywhere. You'll see people blaming short sellers, blaming manipulation, and it's just psychology as to why they are feeling that that is the reason something is going down. So you'll see that penny stocks is the best example. On Investors Hub, when I used to trade penny stocks in the US, you go there and every single board is talking about short seller manipulation. And if you look at the financials, it's very clear. No, it's dilution. This company is issuing an unlimited amount of shares, and that oversupply is hitting the market. And it's just people not really looking at the financials, not understanding that, and again, looking for a scapegoat in terms of who to blame. So we're going to look at the major 5 names here. Again, I highly suggest watching my SPY and market videos as well every day to know what's going on with the overall market and how does it compare to these names. Currently, well, let's say correlations have 3 different ways that they can form. You can have a direct correlation where every little uptick SPY does, these names do as well, or every tick down, these names will do as well. So we'll call that a direct correlation. Then there's correlations that favor the bulls and favor the bears. If this correlation was favoring the bears right now, we would see continued weakness in Canadian MJ. On any market bounce, the bounces would be weaker in Canadian MJ, and on any new lower low, it would be a stronger push down on Canadian MJ. The current scenario we have is a correlation that favors the bulls, and that's because SPY has dropped to lower lows twice now, while we're still maintaining this 4-hour equilibrium pattern on CGC and some of these other major names that keeps us tight and keeps support holding. So the fact that the past few days we have not broke the low of Tuesday for CGC, and then just real quick we'll look at SPY on the daily time frame. Every day the low Tuesday broke on Wednesday, and then that low Wednesday broke on Friday. So again, it is a correlation that favors the bulls, but we're not going to see any kind of significant bounce follow through, in my opinion, unless there is significant bullish news in the sector or unless SPY bounces as well. So again, check out that SPY video, get familiar with what the overall markets are doing because they have a very significant short-term impact on what these stocks are doing. So here is CGC in that 4-hour equilibrium that we were anticipating 2 days ago, and it's nice that it's continuing to play out because Monday is going to give us a nice clear break, and it's pretty much impossible to stay within this range without breaking it on Monday. And again, if we get a bull break or a bear break and it's not in the same direction that SPY is starting the day or that SPY is heading, we have to take that with a grain of salt. So if we get a bull break and then SPY all of a sudden dumps, we're not going to see much follow through for Canadian MJ. Likewise, if we get a bear break and then SPY starts bouncing, Canadian MJ is very likely to start bouncing as well. So here we have a couple clear resistance levels to be watching as the ranges tighten up, and supports as well. 37.32 and 37.35 as a little double bottom. Aside from that, it's 36.62. So these are the 2 most important short-term support levels. As far as resistance, it's 40.37, 41.06, and 42.43. So we have multiple days now of just a tightening range, and again, it will break on Monday. I would be astounded if it does not. If we get the bull break, we have 2 resistance levels to be watching, and if we get the bear break, we have a couple supports to be watching. So that's pretty much where we stand right now. If we break this 4-hour pattern bullish, we then zoom out to the daily chart and say, all right, we're going to look for the daily chart to form a lower high compared to the all-time high, and we're going to have to be watching volume and the S&P 500 to gauge how much upside we can see. because if we do break this resistance level of 42.43, we have tons of space for the bulls to work with. 48.13 is the next resistance level, and that's 15 or so % away. So again, break that level. There's a lot of space to the upside, and if SPY bulls get a real bounce going on its daily time frame, there could be some nice gains. But again, if SPY does not bounce, we're not going to see significant bullish bounce, in my opinion. Again, news would be the only other reason that we could break that correlation from SPY. Checking APH on its daily chart, same thing, same nice 4-hour pattern. It's a little bit more bullish. So again, correlations, you can put them in different groupings, and the APH correlation to CGC is bullish. The ACB correlation to CGC is bearish. So there's differences in individual names, and not all correlations are created equal. 1376 support, 1733 resistance, higher low, lower high. Not confident that our higher low has been established yet here at the end of the day on Friday. Currently support is 1526, but if 1526 breaks on Monday morning, it's actually 1521. But if that level breaks Monday morning, it's not a bear break of this pattern, because we're not confident the higher low has been formed yet, because we didn't have any real bounce at the end of the day. So we're looking for a higher low compared to 1411. If the bulls come out Monday and break 1593 and start to head up towards resistances, then we'll say, all right, our higher low has been established, and it is that 1521 level. So as of right now, the most important supports are 1411 and 1376. And as far as resistance goes, it's 1677 and 1733 as the most important resistance levels. Same pattern, just differences in terms of the amount of range that we have to play within. ACB, daily time frame. And you can see it's not a bear flag because it's just fading to lower highs and lower lows. I've been pointing out how some of these names on the daily chart are potential bear flags that we need to be cautious of, and that's still the case. The burden of proof is still on the bulls. And you can see ACB, and something I mentioned in the video yesterday, or 2 days ago, where it broke bearish and it clearly broke support, but the bears didn't get much follow through because the sector leader, CGC, did not break bearish. So the relationship of ACB to CGC is pretty much the relationship of the sector to the overall market. So if the sector breaks bullish and the market does not, we have to take it with a grain of salt. If ACB breaks bearish, which it did, but the sector leader, CGC, does not, we have to take it with a grain of salt. And that's why we're not seeing much follow through for the bears at this point, because the rest of the sector is holding their supports, even though ACB is not. So we had support down at 918. That broke by a couple pennies. Then it dropped down to $9 even. So $9 is currently psychological support. This is the US name that we're looking at, I believe. Let's actually just pull up the Canadian name for now. And let's see. First, I want to check volume. I always want to compare volume because we switch from these names from one to the other in terms of which exchange we're looking at based on who has higher dollar volume, because that name is more important to me in terms of who is in control. So let's see, we had 25 million on the US side of things. Actually, that already might have been the Canadian ticker, and 13 million for the so it was 13 million for the US and 25 for Canadian. So we're going to stick to the Canadian names here. So it is support of 9 psychological. If 9 psychological breaks, we look to 864 to fill the gap. It's a very clear 4-hour lower high pattern. We just don't have any clear supports nearby like some of these other names do. So 1129 is resistance, and I would be looking at the hourly lower highs. They are more clear on ACB. So 1007 clear resistance, 988 is a new clear resistance, and 972 another level. So 972, 988, and then 10 psychological are the first 3 resistances. $9 and then all the way down to 864 are the next 2 supports. Very clearly, it is the weakest name that we've looked at so far, and I do believe it's the weakest of the big 5. Checking here on Cron, still tight as well. One of the weaker names, but maintaining its support. So the 4-hour tightening range, 751. We have our resistance, higher low, lower high. So support is down here at 762 and 751. As far as resistances go, it's 848 up to 888. So 2 supports, 2 resistances, really tight range. Break is imminent on Monday. TLRY had a solid bull start to the day. It did stand out as a bull on Friday, but again, not going to go very far without the sector coming along. So support is down at 103.25, 101.10, 100 psychological, and then 97 is a very important support level. As far as resistance, it's 115.25, and then we're looking up at 127.80 is the next level. So 115.25, 127.80. So everybody has a couple clear supports, a couple clear resistances from the last 3-4 days of trading to be watching. If I had to rank them, APH is the strongest just because it has the most space before we break support. I would say CGC is number 2, not by much. There's not a whole lot of difference in some of these names. TLRY is in the middle there, and Cron, and then ACB if I had to rank the 4-hour patterns and where they stand. And we're going to be watching very close. Can SPY change the hourly trend, start the oversold bounce, and if it can, we'll be looking for the potential of these 4-hour patterns to break bullish for the bulls to start this coming week. Again, if you're looking for long-term positions, you can enter a bull break of these 4-hour patterns and then try and set your stop loss at break even eventually if we get a good bit of follow through. Ideal scenario is the bulls will bounce with solid enough follow through that you can set your stop to break even and hope that that's your longer term position. And if you get stopped out, no harm, no foul, you get break even, and then you take a step back and reassess the situation and look for another potential entry. And eventually, hopefully you get yourself in a position where you make a good entry, you don't get stopped out at break even, and the bounce is for real and gets follow through, then you have your long-term position. So other than that, I'm personally just patiently waiting. And it was a scenario for me where I sit on my hands, and we call it oven mitts in the TheChartGuys chat room, where we don't trade. And Friday, I could see very clearly we're still in this equilibrium. It's a very clear pattern. I'm just going to wait for this pattern to break. I'm not trading Canadian MJ today. And that prevented me from potentially over trading in a less favorable environment with less volatility and less clear setups. And if I were to trade with the same amount of vigor that I traded, early in the week, at the end of the week, I would have lost a lot of money. I would have given back a lot of that profit. So it's knowing when to wait for the longer term patterns to break out and to give you clarity and direction, and knowing when to play aggressively that is important to do as a trader. And you get a feel for it just recognizing tightening ranges and recognizing volume breaking and volatility. That's another important point I want to make, is that if we do get these bull breaks of these 4-hour tightening patterns, we have to see the volume backing it up. There has to be a spike in volume showing the proof that that break is for real, and we're going to get some follow through for it. So I hope you have a good rest of your weekend. I'm still traveling here, so doubt I'm going to put out a small cap video this weekend, but I'll put that out some point early this coming week. See you soon.